Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of Happiness in Higher Ed podcast. My name is John Hill. My pronouns are he, him, and today's guest, I have Jazmin Jones. And before I formally introduce her, I will be going through and saying off our mission statement. So, in a world that can be engulfed in darkness, we must shine bright and lead the change for a better future. As we continue to shape and challenge emerging adults' minds, it is also our duty to reflect and remember what makes us happy and why we continue to do the work that we do. So here it is, formally introducing Jazmin Jones. Her bio is future Dr. Jazmin Jones is a full-time MBA program coordinator at Mays Business School, where her job duties include academic advising, co-curricular program planning and implementation, student organization advising, and overall support for full-time MBA students during their master's program at Texas A&M University. Jazmin is a transformational leader and social justice warrior and knows the importance of recognizing others' identities and perspectives. Her purpose in life is to empower, support, educate, and encourage others through her lived experiences in education. Jazmin is a doctoral student at Texas A&M University pursuing a PhD in educational administration with an emphasis in higher education. So, Jazmin, would you like to say anything else?
Hello, friends. So as John mentioned, my name is Jazmin Jones, and my pronouns are she and her. And I'm so happy to be here tonight.
Got you. Thank you, Jazmin. So we're just going to get right into it, and we are going to go into the questions, if that's okay with you.
That's okay.
So the first question that I have is, what was the reason you started to pursue a career in higher education?
All right. So the reason that I chose a career in higher education, it really stems back to two things. So the first thing was I love college students. As a junior, well, before then, as a sophomore, so when I started my journey as a health educator, I was a peer educator. And so I started doing presentations and workshops about health and wellness. And I was like, oh my goodness, I really like college students. And I also was an RA. So when I was an RA, I met a lot of different students from different backgrounds. And I'm like, I really like this. And so I went through a phase where I was like, okay, do I want to get a master's in higher education or do I want to get a master's in public health? And then my junior year in undergrad, I met one of my mentors and she changed my trajectory for the rest of my life. And so I met her. I was a very arrogant peer educator because I thought I knew everything because I had been doing it for a few years. And she had to correct me. It was some really good correction that I needed from a mentor. And from that day forward, I watched her navigate student affairs as a Black woman, but also as the first director of health promotion at my undergrad. And so watching her in that role and realizing, wow, I can do this as a career and I can get a master's in public health. And so I was intrigued. And from that moment on, I knew that I wanted to work with college students. And every day when I do my job, even now working with graduate students, you have those glimpses of like, man, I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And I love that feeling. I love that rush that I feel. And so that is the short version of how I fell in love with higher education. And I think I fall in love with the different elements of it every day. And so for me, I started my career in student affairs as a graduate student at Indiana University, working with a student organization and also doing their advice and intervention there. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I love college students. And then I came to A&M and worked as a health promotion specialist for almost 2 years. And now I'm working at an academic college. And I'm like, oh my goodness, there's so much more to higher education. So not only am I doing academic advising, but I also do a lot of co-curricular programming. And then I'm advising student org. So like, I still do student affairs work every day. And it blows my mind of just even being in the role that I am now of like, wow, this role was created for me. And to feel that way. In every position that I've had, I felt that way. It's like, wow, this was a role that was made specifically for me to help me be a better higher education professional. And even finally stepping over to the dark side and doing a PhD in higher education. And I'm sitting in classes and I'm like, oh my goodness, I've been doing this work, even starting as a grad student, for almost 4 years now. 4 years? Yeah, something like that. And I'm like, this is why we do this. And then I even think about being an undergrad and like, if we take it back that way, it's like 8 years. And so like, oh, this is why. This is why we got to learn about risk management or risk mitigation. And so I'm really figuring out that why day by day. So I think I'm still even rediscovering the purpose of why I'm doing it. And so if you ask me this question in 10 years, I'll probably be like, I had this moment when I worked in health promotion where I'm like, I rediscovered my purpose. Or when I was in the full-time MBA office, I rediscovered my purpose as to why I do what I do.
Mhm. Got you. Nice. And if a follow-up question for that specifically is, what was that transition like going from student affairs to academic affairs? Because I know that some of the things that you were talking about is that it was you're doing the same type of work, but it is a little different. So could you speak a little bit about that?
Woo. So I would say the transition for me has been a great one.
Mhm.
I think it has really made me go outside of my comfort zone. And I've been able to learn a lot in a short period of time. And so when I say that I'm doing a lot of the same work, so when I worked in health promotion, I was doing program planning, implementation, working with students, that type of thing, which I'm still doing as a full-time MBA program coordinator, but I also do academic advising. And so that's a totally different bear.
Mhm.
Learning about due dates, when is registration. Also, we register our students for their classes. So for the last few weeks, that's what Jazmin's been doing. She's been registering students for their classes. But then also, if my students have a tailgate, I'm at the tailgate with them. I'm working the tailgate. I'm ordering food. I'm helping them plan that. Graduation is coming up for our students. They graduate in December. So I'm coordinating our graduation planning committee, which has
Mhm.
a lot of different parts. So they have a dinner that they do. They actually plan the hooding. So who's going to be at our hooding? Are we inviting faculty? Are we not inviting? Like, what does this look like? And so that large scale program planning, and then our orientation, John. Our students have a 2-week orientation, okay, where we spend thousands upon thousands of dollars to make sure that our students feel welcome in Aggie land. And
Mhm.
so even now, because that'll be one of my duties of planning core, which is what it's called next year. And so even now, shadowing my supervisor, helping her, it is a huge magnitude of just to plan something for 2 weeks and to get all the missing pieces and work with faculty and the collaboration. So I'm already on a few committees within the office. And so
Mhm.
this week we had to plan for everybody to come back in the office. So we had activities on Tuesday, we had activities on Wednesday, we had activities all week.
Mhm.
And then also I have a public health background, right? And so one of my coworkers on a committee that I'm on, we talked about, okay, we need to incorporate more wellness. And so, of course, Jazz was like, of course we need to incorporate more wellness. And so at first they were just talking about physical activity. And I'm like, okay, I'm pulling out our 8 dimensions of wellness and let's talk through what this is going to look like. So let's talk about emotional wellness. Let's have a social wellness event. And so even with that, being able to bridge that all the way out, and then the perspective that I have is that public health is everywhere we go. And so having someone with a master in public health in a business school at this specific time is so important, because I'm the person that's going to ask the questions about, is this safe? Is it clean? How do we incorporate wellness into our day-to-day life? Are we making sure that our programs are accessible? And so, and really thinking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and thinking about that as a whole, to me, that's public health, right? And so,
Yeah.
even being in that space, how do we do that? Are we making sure our students have accommodation? Are we making sure that even in our classes, our live transcripts on? Also, when I first started, we met with a lot of our different student populations. Let's learn about your experiences. How does it feel to be an international student and get your MBA at Mays? What is your experience like? And so I think for me, being able to have transferable skills has helped me a whole lot,
Mhm.
because my DEIA work is still evolving. And now I'm in a space of like, okay, we need to do this because we got to support our students better. So what are the things that we're going to do? So even for core, me and my supervisor are going to work on, okay, how can we create this curriculum for our students that we can slowly introduce throughout their program?
Mhm.
How can we give them that why? And so I think for me, the content area has changed, but the work is the same. And getting people to understand, and I think in my role in particular, it is really a student affairs, student support role with academic advising. And that's what it boils down to. Now, all jobs in academic affairs aren't that way, but that was the position that I was able to hold and have. And I won't lie to you, the academic advising piece is a learning curve. And I mean, it's a sharp one. And so do I make mistakes? Absolutely. Do I have to learn from mistakes? Have I learned how to work with different advisors from different places at Mays? Absolutely. But it's one of those things that when I do become a dean of students, or when I do become, maybe I'm going to be a dean of an academic college one day, maybe be a dean of a school of public health, I now know the ins and outs of what this looks like so that I can be well-rounded. And for me, that's very important.
True. And you were talking about those transferable skills. And, even I've said this ever since, I got my undergrad degree in kinesiology. I've definitely said that health and wellness, it needs to be incorporated everywhere. It's not necessarily just, in a clinic, just in this one office. Like, you have to have a health and wellness piece, or at least incorporated to everything that you do. So yeah, no, thank you for explaining that. So on to our next question is, what makes you happy? And specifically one thing from higher ed and then one personal thing.
Oh my goodness. So let's do the personal thing first.
Okay.
So I am obsessed with shopping for home decor. If I was rich, I promise you, I would buy a comforter once a month because I love comforters and I love sheets. Also, like, if I could redo like rooms in my house, I would redo them like once a year because I just like, I don't know, I like changing things, but not much. So like subtle changes, like, ooh, let me change out the coffee table, or let me change out the couch. And I think I love that. Or also just being at those stores. So like Home Goods or At Home or Ross, or I just go there and I have a good time. So that is something that makes me so happy. And I wish that I just had thousands of dollars to just spend, because I would buy things all the time and it would be great. So that is one thing that makes me happy. And that is making me happy right now because I'm currently redecorating my apartment. And so I'm having a great time. So that's one thing. And
I mean, it looks amazing as we can see from here.
But yeah, and then in higher ed, what is something that makes me happy? My job is so fulfilling. And I think that each day is different. And I love that. I love getting up and like, yeah, some things are predictable, but when you're working with students, they are unpredictable. And so right now we have about 81 students in our graduating class for this year. And then we have about 80 students coming in. And so between the two of them, my inbox is always popping, always lots of emails in there, and their getting to know them and their personalities, and the student interaction that I wanted in my previous role. I am getting an overdose of it now on a daily basis. And so it's the students. And I know that's very cliche because people probably say that all the time, but the students are the reason that I get up every day to do what I do. Because it's like, okay, I can make a change, even if it's one student. And to me, that makes me happy, because we work in a field, you don't see the money right away. You don't. And so how do you continue on? So that is one thing. I also think I've been blessed to have like phenomenal supervisors. So my supervisor I had in health promotion was like amazing, fantastic, like wonderful. And then it's like my new supervisor, they are so similar. And I'm like, man, I'm picking so well. And I think for that, just to have a supervisor that makes you feel valued and needed. And for me, that helps. I think working in higher ed, of like, my supervisor cares about me and they want me to succeed and they want me to grow, and they're challenging me to be my best self. And then they also are working at their best capacity. And so I think for me, it's been a blessing to just have really high achieving supervisors and to just see excellence and to watch what they've been able to just bring out of me. And that in itself is just so special. So I think those two things make me really happy about higher ed and my job and that type of thing.
Nice, nice. You just like subtly just shout out Denise, Dr. Denise Christophe. But no, that's awesome. That's really good. That's awesome. Um, and also, like you said, higher ed, we don't really get paid a ton of money. And I feel like to have one personal thing that makes you happy being switching out home decor is one of the most expensive things you probably could have. But that's still awesome because I mean, whatever brings you happiness, totally awesome. So then moving on to the next question that we have is what keeps you resilient in the face of some of the challenges you faced? That could be budget cuts, stress from the pandemic, or just stress in general. Like you had said, you're bringing in, graduating 81 students, bringing in 80 students, anything along those lines.
Resilience is the name of the game. And I think in higher education, we're almost forced to be resilient, because if you aren't resilient, you're going to be miserable because things are constantly changing. And either you get with it or people pass you by. And so you have to kind of get with the change. I think for me, especially right now, because I'm in a career shift. And so when I decided to take a job at Mays Business School, people thought I was crazy. Like literally, like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
You have a master's in public health, you work in public health, and you actually are pretty good at what you do. So why?
Can confirm. She does pretty great work.
And so why would you do this? And people literally ask me that question.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, even coming into a new role, it was scary.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, did I make the right choice? Should I have done this? Should I have just stayed where I was at? And I went through that. That was an internal conversation I had with myself. And so I think for me, even in that, just being resilient and being able to approach my new job with confidence. Of course, I experienced some imposter syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
because you come into a space and you're like, I don't know anything. And that's what it felt like. Of like, in health promotion, I'm like, yeah, I know this. I studied it. I know what I'm doing. And so to even feel like a fish out of water and be able to get up. And yeah, some days are hard because I'm like, I don't know how to do my job.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for me, each day I continue to learn. And so I do a lot of positive reframing. So what did I learn today? Because I know that I'm imperfect and I know that I'm going to make mistakes, but that's how I grow. And so I practice a lot of gratitude, and that helps. And so even now, I'm 3 months into my new job, or 4, I don't know. Today is actually my A&M anniversary. I've been at A&M 2 years today, so that's fun. And even with that, of like, I have stability, right? So I've been at a job 2 years. That some millennials don't work jobs for 2 years. And so I always try to find, and I'm not going to say find the positive, but like, how do I practice gratitude of being thankful for the lessons I've learned or the experiences that I had, because it can be difficult. I think during the pandemic, we had a lot of challenges that we had to navigate. Having to create virtual programming in itself was not easy, and it took a lot of thinking outside the box and not even knowing the efficacy of the programming. Did it really work? And some of the stuff you'll never do again. And so how do you even know? How do you keep going? And so when you don't have a student interaction, so I talked about how I love student interaction. Well, during COVID, we weren't in front of students. We weren't seeing students. We were seeing them on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
But that's totally different. And so still finding the purpose in what I'm doing. But I think with resilience, it's just you have to practice it's a skill that you learn, and life never gets easier, but you just learn how to deal with situations better. And moving to Texas, so I drove here. I packed all my things and drove here. And I think after having that experience, and I drove alone, and it was like 15 hours, 16 hours. That was an experience that was life-changing for me. I was like, Jazmin, you can do that? And so after that, and after this career change, I'm like, all right, hit me, And so even building up your self-efficacy and your confidence by sometimes taking a risk or doing something outside your comfort zone, it also helps with that resilience because you can always remind yourself like, I did something pretty great.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, today might suck, but tomorrow won't. And I think that's how I get through.
Nice, nice. And like, I think the one thing that you like touched on specifically was like that reflection piece, because like, I think if you have that ability to go back and see the things that you've done, like you talked about that you had gotten in your car and literally had driven, from, it was Indiana, correct?
Mhm.
You drove from Indiana to Texas, and then seeing this career shift and like seeing all the things, that you've done, like having the ability to do that, I think is I think every single time that I think about like hard times or like struggles, it's always back to, what have I done to get here? And like, allowing myself that 24 hours to feel, that those feelings of like, today wasn't my day, it was a bad day, it was a rough day. And then bouncing back, like you said, the next day and be like, today wasn't it, but tomorrow's gonna be it. So, but no, that's awesome. So next question is, what are some of the ways that you practice self-care to stay on your A game?
Ooh, all right. Self-care tips. Woohoo. So self-care is constant, okay? It is something that we have to do every day. It is not something that we should just save for the weekends. So every day I try to do one self-care thing. One. Sometimes it's more than one. So working out is super helpful. And I won't even say working out. I will say moving my body. I'm really getting away from using like working out, like physical activity. So, right. So moving my body, whether it's dancing or going for a walk or actually going to the gym, but getting some movement in, great way. One of my favorite self-care things. When I started my PhD, I promised myself that I would get a massage every month. So I go once a month to get a massage. That is one of my self-care practices. Also, I take time for myself. A lot of people think that I'm an extrovert, and I try to remind people I am not. I can turn it on and I can turn it off. But sometimes I just need Jazmin time where I just lay on my couch and I watch TV or I take myself out to dinner. And that is so helpful for me. And I just have to take time to be alone with my own thoughts, even though sometimes I don't want to do that, but it's really, really important. I also think, and this is probably going to be a weird self care thing, but clearing my inbox, my email inbox to zero feels really good some days. And so I try, trying to do that, or also cleaning my house, or like just things that are going to overall make my life easier. Those are some self-care practices that I think about, but I think that we have to get out of making our self-care cost money. And so figuring out options. So like I journal. My Alexa's right here. She's probably listening to me. Hopefully she doesn't start talking. But even with Alexa, she's listening now. I listen to music. So am I going to take 20, 30 minutes to listen to music? So just many different things for self-care, but making sure that I do at least one every single day just for Jazmin, to recharge and re-energize. And I love sleeping. So anytime I can go to sleep, I will. I miss being able to take naps. I used to take naps in undergrad, and when that 8 to 5 life started in grad school, I've not been able to nap, but anytime I can take a nap too. So yeah.
Okay,
That's
nice. Nice. No, and I think that the one thing that I want to point out is like, your self-care techniques, I know for a fact are on point. If I remember correctly, because we had talked about the monthly check-ins, or like, was it monthly or weekly, that I cannot remember their first name, but Dr. Knowles from
Oh, on
Instagram.
Instagram. Yes, I love those.
And I remember we were talking through those and checking in with yourself. But I think that it's important to touch on what you talked about with like your PhD program, and like telling yourself that like this is one thing that I'm going to do for myself, because it kind of like gives you that forward thinking of it's going to be a strenuous time, but I'm still going to have this ability to be like once a month, I'm going to look forward to that day. And it might be tough, but it kind of like gets you into the future, but not necessarily like anxiety inducing, but it gets you like, I know I can do this. because I know at the end of the month, I'm going to have the best massage of my life, you know? And then, like you said, that's like, that costs money. And then you kind of like add in, you know, cost effective things of, you know, taking a nap free. Don't have to treat yourself on that one, you know, and other things that you would talk through. So no, I think that's awesome. And I know that you've always, you are the one person that I look up to for self-care game, because it's definitely a strong self-care game. So
Yeah. I need more money though, because I would like to get things that cost money. And so I try to not spend money on things. But like, for example, this weekend I was in Dallas at my cousin's house and they have a hot tub. So Jazmin got in the hot tub every day because I love hot tubs. So that was great self-care for me. And, you know, and so even finding those options of like, yeah, my cousins have a pool. So guess what? And this is a free option for me. And so it worked out.
got you. Nice. Have you thought about somehow turning that spare bedroom into a spa spa room?
No, I haven't, because my apartment complex will put me out. But yeah.
Got you. I just had to ask. You know, you never know. But so the last question that I have for you is, what is one piece of advice you live by in your practice?
Oh man, that's such a good question. One piece of advice is and it's gonna be so cliche, but only compete with yourself. And I say that advice because for me, especially as a young professional, it's important to stay focused on what is my goal? What is my end goal? Where do I want to be? And for me, that is so important. And so from last year, have I grown as a professional? Have I grown personally? Like, have I grown academically? And thinking about those things so that I can continue to move forward, because my journey is different than yours. Our journey is going to be different than someone else. And so only competing with myself to be my best self, and knowing that you have to know when to persevere certain situations, but then you also have to know when to walk away. And so what is best for me? What is going to be best for my career goals? Am I making the best choices and decisions when it comes to my personal, academic, professional growth? And I think for me, that has been so important, because at the end of the day, you're the only person that has to live with your decisions. And so you at least deserve to be happy when you're making those decisions. And that is my best advice, because guess what? Your parents have done what has made them happy. Your mentors have done what makes them happy. Your supervisor is going to do what makes them happy. So why are you going to be miserable in the process? Do what makes you happy. Don't harm anyone, of course, and live your best life. And that's it. And I think for me, one more good quote that I have of, let your work speak for itself. And so people don't ever have to like you in the workplace. Yeah, that's great. But your work speaks for you. So people can never say, oh, John did a terrible job on this. No, John did a great job on this project because he worked hard and he did X, Y, and Z. And so always let your work speak for itself. Always operate with integrity and honesty. I think for me, that's so important. And your core values that you have, never lose those, no matter what environment you are in. So social justice and diversity, equity, and inclusion, accessibility, those are important to me. So no matter what role I'm in, you're going to know that and you're going to see it because they're important. And so those core values that you have, no matter what university you work at, no matter what role you in, stick to those. And always remember, your gift will make room for you. And I'm a testament to that. I've been in spaces and I'm like, oh my goodness, should I be here? Do I know what I'm doing? And my gift has continued to open doors for me and make room for me to continue to be my best self.
Nice. And, you know, I think there was one point something I was thinking about was, you know, if you ever become jealous or, you know, have those feelings that you were talking through in the workplace, is someone, I don't remember who told me, I wish I could name them right now. They probably get a lot of credit for this. But asking them questions about how they got there. So for whatever reason, if you're feeling jealous about, you know, when they have a huge accomplishment, you know, ask them what they got there, you know, like whether that's program based, or, won an award, like what were some of the things that you did to get this award? That way that you're learning from that experience rather than just like sitting there and manifesting those negative feelings, because it's going to impact your work. I feel like if you sit with that, it's just going to every day, it's just going to eat away at you rather than taking care of that issue. It may not be an issue to you, but at least having the ability and that professional workplace environment to ask questions, and keep it a conversation, so because if you want to be there at one point, if the person is already there, asking them, so but no, I think that's awesome. So, well, thank you, Jazmin, for being here, and I cannot thank you enough for being our 6th guest. Just remember, everyone, to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel, as well as listen to us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And just as a heads up, our episode 7 guest will be Mustafa Anwar. And yeah, so without further ado, I hope you all have a good rest of your day, and we will see you next time.